So I just got to get the thumbs up from Jenny.
Okay, so we're gonna have him come this way.
Right.
Exit that.
Right. Okay.
Oh my God. How old are you? Oh,
Very,
uh,
very, very old. I was.
are you
I'm
under
so-
65?
No.
So yes.
Um.
Finally.
Let,
So many people say they're old.
let me know when to start.
You got a blue light. Yeah, okay.
Like her, she's only 47. Not 47.
Wait a second.
Nice.
We ready?
That's good.
Can I have your attention, please? Wow, extraordinary. Well, welcome to Kopernik Observatory. My name is Drew Desker, and it's so great to have you here for our Winter Star Party 2026. We wish we had better clouds or less cloud cover for you, but we have some great activities in all of our rooms, including a telescope tour. So if you haven't been in our telescope domes, you definitely got to check it out. But 553 years ago, a Polish astronomer by the name of Mikołaj Kopernik, you may know him more as Nicholas Copernicus, was born. And back in 1973, a group of Polish immigrants, people of Polish heritage, got together and decided, let's celebrate Copernic's 500th birthday by more than putting a statue in a park. And so they built the original observatory. And we've been a public observatory for, again, well over 50 years. We're also a STEM education facility. And it's just so great to have the community involved in this. So we're going to, if you would do the honors here to get us started. So one of my other jobs is actually, I'm a music director at a church. And what I tell the congregants that get there, that, that our parish sings, but I just say, just sing with the voice God gave you, whatever that means. So I did ask for it. So we're going to sing happy birthday to Mikołaj Kopernik. Try I say that? Mikołaj Kopernik. All right, there you got it. Ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mikołaj Kopernik. Very good. Happy birthday to you. All right, so what I'd like you to do is, rather than just do a mob, if we could just sort of have a line, just come this way and come back around. And we got plenty of cupcakes, so would you stick that here? Well, yeah, people will take it. Come right around.
That's to get the blue.
Yep.
Your face in your mouth.
All right. Come around so that people can get out. Yeah. Get a real flow going here.
Outside that, it's little.
So I think it dies in my mouth.
Good job.
The way they spelled that name over there, it should be a what? Mikołaj,
Right.
right?
With the L. Kopernik, and I am just thrilled to have such a great crowd here, a full crowd. And one of the things that we do from March to mid-December, every Friday night, we do a public program of some sort, having some person come in, talk about some aspect of science or technology, and just share that with the world. And we're not necessarily trying to turn everybody into an engineer or a scientist, but at least open your mind and perhaps inspire some new people to get into STEM careers. And so today we actually happen to have a NASA mission controller, and he'll talk about his work here in a moment. But actually, in 2 Fridays from now, starting March 6th, we start our Friday night programs that will start at 8 o'clock. They run about an hour. The first one is actually about virtual reality, and actually Jenny Cardy, our technology manager and live stream astronomer, will talk about the work she's been doing with virtual reality and how we're actually taking it into schools. And then there'll actually be another session in May. For those of you who have never done VR, we have a classroom set of VR headsets, and you can actually come in and it'll be part of that presentation. So then the week after the VR headset, we have some engineers from Lockheed Martin in Owego who are doing actually the software for what's called the glass cockpit for the Orion capsule. And by the way, that Orion capsule is the one that's going to be actually going to the moon in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. And so it's continuing. The Southern Tier really has had a very long history of work in the space exploration industry or efforts. In fact, out on the back table near where the cupcakes were is the space shuttle computer that was built in Owego that actually flew a dozen times on Columbia. But anyway, we're going to transition here. Pete, again, grew up, well, I'll let Pete tell you where he grew up. But
Sure.
Pete did a talk about 4 years ago here, and I thought it was time to get updated, especially now where we've got some exciting missions coming up. And so Pete, take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Drew, and everyone at Kopernik for having me. It has been a long time. I've got a sort of short presentation here about mission control, how it works, what we do, why it exists, and then I'd really like to open it up for answers and questions and answers for anybody who has any NASA or space-related questions for me. I have to say it's appropriate that this is an observatory that you're at, because it was actually astronomy that got me into my interest in space. You guys have some wonderful dark skies up there. My grandparents are originally from Susquehanna, and while I was born and lived in Maryland for most of my life, I spent my summers just outside of Deposit at one of the many tiny little lakes up there. I guess it's about 30, 40 miles from where you guys are right now. And so Drew's right, there's a long history of space and space-related and technology items in the Southern Tier, and so I'm happy to come back and talk about it. So let me go ahead and share my screen. And this is completely unrehearsed, so if I make a mistake, it's because I didn't practice first. So let me go ahead and get this set up for y'all. All right.
And what we'll do here is, if it's possible, we'll just let's hold our questions to the end, and then what I'll do is I'll walk with this microphone so that especially people on the live stream can hear the question.
That sounds good. Excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so I have a cough drop in my mouth. All right. So wanted to talk about mission control. I'll introduce myself a little bit more here in a second. It's always busy there. It's always in TV and movies, and it's always being talked about, but a lot of people don't really know what we do. So a little bit about me to set the stage. I've been with NASA for 14 years. I was hired in 2012. Anything I say tonight, I'm not representing NASA in any official capacity. This is just my own personal experience with the job and my own thoughts and ideas. And I'm a NASA flight controller. So I'm the guy in mission control. And I have essentially what amounts to 4 different jobs. So The first job is I'm a Capcom, which stands for Capsule Communicator. And I sit next to the flight director, the guy in charge, and I listen to all of the technical conversations that go along and happen in mission control. And then that is filtered through the flight director, who decides what we want to tell the crew or ask the crew, and what information is a little bit extraneous or confusing or could be reworded. So it's my job to take all of that information, which can be very technical and very complicated, and sometimes I don't even fully understand it because I'm not a system expert in some of the discussions that are happening. It's my job to take all of that, press the button on the microphone, and call the astronauts. So when you hear, like in a movie, you hear the beep, and then there's a voice on the radio. That's me. That's my voice. And then the crew responds. We have a conversation, and they talk back. And basically the reason we do this is because you've got dozens and dozens of people in mission control. It would be super complicated and super confusing if they were all trying to talk to the crew. So it's funneled through the flight director and then to me, and then I talk up and down to the crew. Everybody else can hear the crew answer, but they are the only ones that I can talk to. So they can only hear me, but everybody can hear the answer. So that's for the International Space Station program. Of course, the space station is still up there. We're hoping to get it to about 2030. It was originally launched in something like 1998 or 7. I should probably have looked that up before I sat down. But it's been up there for like 30 years. It's a wonderful piece of equipment. We'll talk about that later. And then for the Artemis program, the new moon program, right, sending people back to the moon for the first time in over 53 years, which is crazy to me. I'm a CDH flight controller, so that's command and data handling. So for Artemis, I don't get to talk to the astronauts, but I am in charge of all of. I'm part of the team, I should say, that's in charge of all of the computers, computer tablets that the crew uses for communication and photos and whatnot, and anything you'd use a computer for, and avionics on the Orion spacecraft. So that's like the displays that Drew was just talking about. And we're hoping to launch in about 2 weeks. Although I heard on the news today it might have gotten delayed. They might have found some issues with the rocket, but I know about as much as you guys know because it's the weekend and I haven't checked my email. So, and then the third job I do in mission control is I'm a Pluto, which is an outdated acronym. Doesn't really mean anything anymore. But basically, back on the space station, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of laptops and tablets and network hardware and switches and routers. And so my team is in charge of all of the computers and whatnot on board the International Space Station, but not the computers that actually fly the space station. So there's a separation there. There's the ones that keep the crew alive and control the spacecraft, and then there's the ones that the crew uses for all of their procedures, references, phone calls, photos, science, email, whatnot. So we're in charge of those. And then when I'm not sitting in mission control, I'm working more Artemis program stuff. So I'm doing a bunch of integration. The Artemis program is a wonderful international collaboration between countries and a lot of private industry in the United States. And so one of the things that I do is I make sure that everybody's talking to each other, and I make sure that the spacecraft and the networks and the ideas that these companies are developing and designing all work together. It's really easy when you have such a huge project like this. It's really, really easy for someone to make a decision, and then for whatever reason, other people don't find out about that decision, and then they will make a decision, and then you end up with some sort of incompatibility. So like it could be anything from atmospheric pressure, the type of air the astronauts breathe, the type of power connections, the type of computers, the concept for how automated the vehicle is going to be. So I've been really lucky to work with SpaceX, Blue Origin, Toyota, the Japanese Space Agency, the Orion program, and also the Lunar Gateway program, to make sure all of these vehicles that we want to build and work on the moon for the next, however many years, hopefully indefinitely, all work together. So that's kind of my daily life. Although right now I'm just waiting to find out if Artemis is going to launch or not. So there's been a lot of hurry up and wait. And then that's me over there talking to the crew. We get all sorts of random visitors. This is Victor Wembanyama. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. He plays for the Spurs. He's this French basketball player. Wonderfully, wonderfully nice guy. Super smart and super tall. So he came into Mission Control one day. We handed him a special phone. He could talk to the crew, and he had a great time. He was wonderful to host. So really, really enjoyed talking to him. All right, so that's kind of like a background of who I am and what I do. But the whole concept of mission control really goes back to the early days of spaceflight. NASA came out of NACA, which was, I think it was like National Aeronautics Advisory Committee or something like that. Basically, it was NASA before spaceflight. So it was all airplanes and aeronautics and science and jet engines and that. And then that turned into NASA in 1958. And they realized they needed mission control. They couldn't just send people to space and have them do everything, because the astronauts would be much, much too busy actually flying the spacecraft, like keeping it steady, keeping it straight, and then doing science, and now on the space station also doing maintenance. So they're just too busy with their daily lives to monitor everything that the spaceship is doing. This is more true for back in the day, but it still holds true a little bit today. There's just too much going on, too many systems, too much data to store on board the spacecraft. So a lot of that is actually offloaded to the ground, where we have more room and more data and more computers. So the spacecraft is automated, but it's also kind of like remote control. So all of the calculations and whatnot, the heavy hitting stuff is done on the ground, so that the spaceship can be simpler and lighter and not as expensive. And this, like I said, was much more true back in like the 60s, but it still holds true today for a little bit. And then the other thing is, while the astronauts are wonderful, intelligent people, the best of the best, they are not experts in everything, and they can't be. There's just no way. So basically, mission control allows the experts and all of the systems, the life support, the rockets, the science, that kind of thing, allows all of those experts to be on the ground and work the mission with the crew, because you could not train a crew to do all those things. You just can't. It's too much. A human can't memorize and do all of that. And even still, it takes like 5 to 10 years often for astronauts to fly through training. And so you couldn't add like a lifetime of training on top of that. So we're on the ground to help them out remotely. Generally speaking, the person in charge of the mission is not actually the crew. There are nuances to this, but the flight director on the ground is the guy who's actually, or girl. I've worked with wonderful men and women who are flight directors. They are actually in charge of the mission. So all of the decision making and all of the conversation and churn goes through them, and they filter it out. And then they tell me, the Capcom, okay, tell the crew A, B, C, and I'll call it up. The crew will think about it. They'll call it back down, and then the whole process will start over. And that's how we have the conversation with the crew. Decisions are made with a hierarchy. The first and foremost is we have to ensure crew safety. So like if you're having a really, really bad day, the most important thing is that you get your crew home alive. The second most important thing is that you protect the spacecraft so that you don't accidentally damage it and then can't use it. This is especially true for the space station. We want to make sure that we don't break something that means that we can't use it for the next, 5 to 6 years. And then mission objectives come third, which is like science and engineering and whatnot. On a normal day, we hopefully never even have to think about crew safety and protecting the spacecraft because everything's going great. But that can change in a second. So we always have to be ready and make sure everybody is safe and sound. So this is basically a rough layout of the Mission Control Center for the International Space Station. And you can see the flight director is in the middle, and that's because he's the one talking to everybody. And I'll go through these really quickly because I don't want to bore you guys with me just talking and droning on. I want to get to the question and answer session and actually have like a conversation with you guys. So I'll go through this quickly. In no particular order, we've got the GC team, They're in charge of all of the ground networks and communications that make mission control work. The network in the building is incredibly complicated, and I can't even begin to imagine. It almost seems more complicated than the spacecraft itself. So they're in charge of that. The Rio, they are one of the several ways we can talk to Russia. We can call these guys, and they'll relay the message for us to our Russian counterparts in their mission control. Ethos is life support. It's pretty self-explanatory. Recycle the water, which if you have questions, we can talk about that later. Keep the air clean, keep it filtered, keep the crew alive. ISO is stowage. There's a ton of stuff up on the space station, and the crew doesn't have all day to look for it. So these guys keep track of where everything is. And if the crew needs to find something, they call down and ask, and they're like, okay, here, it's in this module in this corner. That saves the crew a bunch of time. Ops plan does all the scheduling for the crew day. Basically so that the crew just has a plan to follow. Like you show up at work and you've got stuff to do, so does the crew. Pluto, I mentioned before, does all of the IT and computers on the space station. Robo does all of the robotics, so like the robotics arms, which are built in Canada and are incredible pieces of technology. Spartan is the power, so think the big solar panels, making sure they're pointing at the sun, making sure the batteries are okay when the space station circles around to the night side of Earth. ADCO keeps the space station like oriented in the right direction, so like it's facing the right way. Flight is in charge. Capcom talks to the crew. OSO is the maintenance team. They fix everything. So if you've ever seen Apollo 13 when they have to make that new air filter, the OSO team is the team that came up with that, so that the crew wouldn't suffocate on carbon monoxide. PAO are the TV news guys. You'll see them in the Mission Control Center for big events and launches and whatnot. Topo manages the actual orbit of the space station to make sure that visiting vehicles and whatnot will actually catch up with it and meet at the right spot. Cronus does the avionics. These are the computers that control everything and keep the crew alive. VVO and ICE are basically responsible for when we have a resupply vehicle or like a Dragon coming up and there's people or cargo in it. It's their job to get it to the space station and then dock it and connect all the power and data and networks and cooling so that the spacecraft can stay up there for 6 months or however long it's there. EVA is in charge of the spacewalks, and BME and surgeon are in charge of all the medical equipment and the actual doctors in case the crew gets hurt. You might have seen in the news we had some sort of medical emergency a few weeks ago, and the crew had to come home early. I don't know what the problem was. I know everybody is safe. In fact, nobody in mission control except the doctors know what the problem was. The crew called down, said they wanted to talk to one of their doctors, and then they privatized the audio so that nobody could hear them. And we are really good about respecting privacy of the crew. But they're home now. They're all safe and sound. But it was really cool just how everything came together and like a finely oiled machine to get them home safe. So this is basically the gist, and we're getting about halfway through here. So we can start actually having a casual conversation after this. So here's how mission control is laid out. This is what you see on TV, right? You've got the spaceship talking to the flight director and the Capcom, and then you've got the flight control team in the big room. But that's not actually the entire team. It's actually like this. For each person you see in the mission control room, they're talking in their headset to someone in a different mission control room, a backup, smaller support mission control room, because each system is so complicated, they'll need help too. And so the idea is that your person in the back room, the person who doesn't show up on TV, can go like really heads down, deep dive into problems, really focus on the system and the solution and the technical nitty gritty stuff. And then they can relay that information to the person in the big flight control room, who can then integrate that information with everybody else and integrate it with the whole system. So there's a lot more going on than would initially appear. And then just to add more people on top of that, there's even another mission control room called the Mission Engineering Room, or the MER. And that is staffed with like technical experts and engineers, like actual like design engineers. So that if we have a problem that stumps us, or we don't have time to fix it or work on a solution, we call these guys up and they can like, they have all the documentation, all the technical information, all the like nuts and bolts, schematics and whatnot for the system that is giving us trouble. And they'll come up with a solution and then tell us what they recommend we do. So it's like a pyramid. And so you can see it starts out wide and gets narrower. And so the wider the spread, the more just random stuff and ideas and trial and error and references and people. And of course, you can't overwhelm the crew with all of that, especially because they're really busy. They need to know short and sweet what they have to do or what the problem is or what's next on the agenda. And so as you work your way up toward the flight director, information is weeded out and it's prioritized. And then it gets to the flight director and he makes the ultimate decision about what the crew is going to do or what we're going to do, what we're going to tell the crew. So that's kind of how it works. It flows up. And okay, but yeah, so this seems like a lot, right? So we got 4 people going to the moon, you've got like 12 people in orbit around Earth. Like, why are there so many hundreds of people doing this? This seems like crazy overkill. But space is extremely dangerous. I alluded to it earlier. I think it was about 10 years ago. There was an Italian astronaut named Luca Parmitano who was going for a spacewalk, and his spacesuit, the backpack on his spacesuit that recycles the air and the batteries and keeps you alive and breathing, broke in such a way that it started filling his helmet up with water, right? And that's not something you really generally worry about when you go to space. You don't generally worry about drowning when you're in space because you're in space. But it almost happened. And so we had to get him back inside real quick and get that helmet off. But that was something weird that we had never seen before. And so it can go from a fun, relaxing, happy day to like, oh my gosh, somebody could die in a split second. And so you want all those people ready at a moment's notice to help. There's also lots of weird stuff to consider in zero gravity. And so like if you break something on the ground or you're eating a sandwich, you know, the crumbs won't fall to the ground. But if you're in space and you're eating a sandwich where you break a piece of glass, it doesn't fall. So that just stays in the air. And then you can end up breathing in your sandwich or getting your sandwich stuck in your eyes. Or if it's glass or something dangerous, you could really hurt yourself. This is one of the reasons that like early spaceflight didn't use pencils, because graphite conducts electricity. And if you get a bunch of graphite particles like behind the panels where the wires are, you can cause a short circuit and a fire. We also have a lot of people and doctors looking at the crew because the human body reacts weird in gravity. There's eyesight changes as fluid rushes to your head because gravity doesn't pull it out, changes your eyesight, and it makes you weaker. A lot of the research we do on the space station is about osteoporosis because without gravity to constantly fight against, your body loses strength. And so we're doing a lot of research with aging and health on the space station. So that requires a whole team of people. There's no replacement parts, right? If something breaks, you can't just like go to the store and get a new one. You have to wait several months for a new rocket to come up with the piece that you need. And even then, sometimes you can't get it. So we have a lot of system experts and engineers and operators to make sure that we don't accidentally break something, or that if we do break something, they tell us how to fix it. Because we have to be completely self-sufficient with that. And then, you know, I talked about it earlier. Basically, there's just a ton going on. You've got a super complicated spaceship. You're trying to keep people alive. You're trying to do science. You're trying to work problems and fix systems and learn. And just to dump all of that onto 4 to 12 people, even if they're awesome fighter pilots and doctorates and, you know, incredible humans, it's just too much. You can't just like dump that amount of work onto these people, then send them far away from home where they're tired and they're working long days and they miss their families, and just expect them to be able to do this all by themselves. And then theoretically, newer spacecraft and different spacecraft can have smaller flight control teams. The International Space Station is kind of old, but it's still working really well. And so for like Orion, the flight control team is smaller. And then our commercial partners, SpaceX and Blue Origin, also have their own flight control teams. I don't know how they're laid out, but they may be more or less complicated based on what their spacecraft needs and what their mission is. So I'm down here in Texas at the Johnson Space Center, but there are other flight control centers. These are just a couple of examples. I'm not going to read them, but there are other flight control centers around the world. Different countries have them. Canada has one. Even Alabama has a mission control center that is only focused on all the science that the astronauts do. So we fly the space station, keep the astronauts safe, and Marshall in Alabama has a whole setup where they just do all the science. Because again, we're experts in the spacecraft, we can't also be experts in the science, and so that's split out. And then out in California is where they do all the cool Mars rover stuff at JPL, and that's what this is a picture of here. Is the California Mission Control. So I think that's basically it. I know I talked a lot, and I wasn't able to find as many cool pictures as I thought I could, so I apologize. But Mission Control is staffed 24/7. There's 3 shifts per day with an hour overlap between each shift. And usually people work for 1 week at a time, and then they're back in their office doing other stuff. And then every couple months they'll go in and work a week. And then there are more or less people depending if it's like the weekend or if it's like overnight or if there's a spacewalk or anything weird or fun and exciting happening. We'll bring more people in to help with that specific task. So so that's basically kind of an overview. I know it was kind of fast and high level, but if you guys have any questions or just want me to talk about anything in particular about NASA or space or whatever, just let me know, and I'll see if I can help you out.
All right, I'll start with a question. Is there a 3D printer on the ISS? And
There is.
And can they use that to possibly replace some parts?
There is. It's part of a scientific payload, so it's managed by the Marshall team, and I think it was built by a private company. I don't know if they've ever used this 3D printer to build parts that they used. They have built parts and tools with it just to see if they could, but I don't know if they ever actually used them. Usually with an experiment like this, you'll put it on the space station just to see if it'll work, if the concept will work. And then if it does work, then you can kind of like send a second version and make it better, and then a third version and make it better. And so it's kind of a baby step process. But the idea is ultimately, yeah, we would want 3D printers that could do plastic or metal, especially on the moon, so that if a part broke, we could just make a new one. You can actually take lunar dust and you can melt it with lasers into this like rock metal stuff. And so you could use that as building blocks or repair material or what have you.
So that's the technical term stuff, right?
But yes, rock moon stuff.
All right. Do we have any questions out here? We do here. So give me a second. I'm going to bring my microphone over here, but Pete's actually listening to you on this microphone, so I'm going to get this a little more in the middle of the thing. So here's your first question.
All right.
What is the goal of Artemis? Like, what are they going to do on the moon?
Excellent question. And I'm embarrassed that I didn't include that in my presentation, given that it's taken up so much of my life.
He was just setting you up for it because you knew you were going to get to it.
That's right. We coordinated. So I'll start by talking about the Apollo program in the 60s and very early 70s. It only lasted like a handful of years. The Apollo program was quick and dirty. Get 3 people to the moon, 2 on the surface, pick up rocks, come home. We did a lot of science with that, but the real intent of that was to beat the Russians because, America and we're better than the Russians and capitalism. And it was only accidentally that created a lot of new knowledge and science and the inspiring historical Apollo program. That was not the intent. It was to beat the Russians. It was almost militaristic, even though it was a civilian program. It was really just to upstage our rivals. The Artemis program is specifically focused on science. You'll hear that we're in competition with China. And yeah, it would be cool to get back to the moon before China gets to the moon. But that's not why we're going. We're going because there's ice on the moon. There's actual, I don't know if they're glaciers, but there's water and ice on the moon in these craters that have never, ever seen the sun. They're so deep and they're on the southern pole. And so they've been pitch black essentially for eternity. And so we want to go explore those craters because we can take the ice and turn it into drinking water for humans or plants. We can turn it into air for breathing, and we can turn it into rocket fuel because it's hydrogen and oxygen. But we also want to see what kind of particles And science or anything that we haven't thought of is trapped within this ice because it's so old. It's as old as the moon itself. And so if we can use that to understand where the moon came from and how the moon formed, we can use that to figure out where the Earth came from and how the Earth formed. And then we can use that to figure out where life and people came from. So we want to go and establish a base. We want to dig up this ice. We want to use it as a test bed for going to Mars. We want to use it as a test bed for new technologies and medicine and computers and materials. And we want to use it to figure out basically the history of the Earth and the moon to better understand our place in the universe.
All right, thank you. Also, it's a great way to test out what it's going to take to go to Mars.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's actually one of the things that the space station's done. It's been up there for 30 years. And we have learned so much that we didn't know by just going and doing it. And so there's going to be a ton of stuff that we learned from living and working on the moon that we haven't even thought of yet. And a lot of it, new technology and information will trickle down to here, to Earth, and make our lives better.
All right, we have another question.
Yeah, hey, thanks for coming. So when they get rid of the space station, are they going to replace it, even though we're going to the moon?
Yes. Yes. Good question. So we're in a really interesting time with NASA right now because prior to now, we only did one thing at a time. We had the Mercury program, Gemini program, Apollo program, Space Shuttle, and Space Station. It was like one thing at a time, although the Space Station and Space Shuttle were part of the same thing. But now we have the technology has developed so much that it is realistic for companies to build their own space stations. And so NASA is holding a competition, and this is all publicly available information, is basically holding a competition to see who can design and build a space station for us. And there's 3 companies currently in the running. I think it's Axiom, Vast, and Starlab, or no, sorry, Axiom, Vast, and Voyager Space, which has the Starlab space station. And the idea is that we will pay them to launch and fly a modern, brand new, commercially built space station that we can then fly our astronauts to without having to like fully maintain and take care of. And so that lets us still get all the science and astronauts and research done in space, while most of our money and attention can go toward the moon. And so this is a really cool time because not only is NASA involved, we have a lot of really good commercial providers, which I've mentioned earlier, and they're starting to do stuff on their own. So there's a lot of things happening, and the future of space travel with NASA will probably look very different than what we're used to, because instead of like one mission and one type of spacecraft, we'll have, half a dozen different types of spacecraft and half a dozen different things going on, and go to the moon, or you can go to one space station or another space station, or just go into orbit. So there'll be a lot of things happening at the same time.
Also, there's going to be a space station called Gateway that will actually be orbiting the moon. And
yes.
those Artemis astronauts, when they start going to the moon, they will do the work on the moon, but then they will return to the space station for sort of recovery time, if you will. So we got a couple more questions here.
What's involved for an astronaut to do a extra vehicle activity? I mean,
it's a lot.
There's a lot.
It is a lot. So the first thing is they have to be in really good shape. I mean, all of them are by definition in really good shape. But the spacesuits we currently use are actually designed in the 80s. They're not new, and they've been refurbished and rebuilt and repaired constantly. One of our commercial partners, Axiom, is actually currently designing the new spacesuit right now. But the spacesuits we currently have, they're multi-layered, and they're kind of like a balloon. And so when the astronauts go outside, it pressurizes, which makes it really stiff. And even just like moving their fingers to like grab equipment and turn bolts and use wrenches and screwdrivers is exhausting, and they can get really sore hands. get really weak hands. They can get way out of breath. So to prep for an EVA, they have to be in super good health. There's a bunch of like checking that we do. So last time, actually, I was working Capcom. I was talking to the astronauts, the crew that actually just came home. They didn't get to do their EVA because of the medical situation, but they were preparing for it. And so before they actually put the suit on and go out the door, there's like a week or two of checks where they put the suit on and they test it to make sure it fits right. Do they have to adjust it? They put it on and make sure, like, do the communication caps and the microphones work. They have to charge the batteries for the spacesuit, make sure the batteries are going to work, because if those batteries die, that's your air and communication and your lights. It's not a good day. They have to make sure the spacesuit is comfortable because they're in them for like 8 to 10 hours. And so you don't want like something rubbing on your arm for 8 to 10 hours because it's going to make it raw. And so there's a whole lead up for that. They do like little bit of exercising to help get the nitrogen out of their blood, because the spacesuit is lower pressure than the inside of the space station. And so it's like when a scuba diver surfaces too fast, you don't want to accidentally get the bends where the nitrogen in your blood turns to bubbles. That's a really bad day. And then, since the Luca Parmitano issue, they also have to make sure the spacesuit isn't going to fill with water. So they do a bunch of checks on the backpack to make sure it's not going to break. And that is on top of, that's just like to get them out the door. But before they fly, they spend days and days and days studying and practicing the spacewalk. We have a giant pool down here in Houston with the space station in it. And because you float in water, they use that to actually practice the spacewalk. They put a real spacesuit on, they lower them into the pool, and then they go through all the motions over and over and over again to make sure they know what they're supposed to do like the back of their hand. So it's a hugely complicated thing to get out for a spacewalk. But it would be nice to just put on a suit and go. But the reality is it's so dangerous and so time consuming. We really have to be 100% prepared for it, hence all the practice.
All right, we got a couple more questions here.
What do the people do when they get off the spacecraft?
Like when they get home, or like when they get onto the space station?
When they get like home, when they're getting like off the spaceship.
When they return home to Earth? Okay, yeah, when they return home to Earth.
When they return to Earth? So the first thing they do is probably sleep, right? They do, so it depends how they come back. If they land in a Russian spacecraft, they'll fly them in a private jet from Russia across Europe, across the Atlantic, back to Houston. If they land in a SpaceX or Boeing capsule in the Pacific Ocean or in the desert, they'll use the same private jet and fly them home. They rest. They do a lot of medical checkups, but they rest. We don't bother them for a while when they get back. After a couple weeks, we'll do a bunch of debriefs. We'll talk to them. We'll see, okay, what worked, what didn't, what could we do better? Is there anything Mission Control did or NASA did that like really irritated you that we didn't know about? Is there anything that did that you really liked? So we make sure that we learn all the lessons from their mission, and we just make sure they're healthy, and we let them rest and get their strength back and get used to gravity again, and then they go back to the office and work like you and me.
I heard a story. One of the local astronauts, Doug Hurley, said that there's a lot of a lot of congratulations when you come back, from a space, from a mission, and then you get home and the next day you're cutting the grass.
Yeah, it's Scott Kelly. I think it was Scott, right? Who did the almost a year in space a few years ago. There's a video of him. He's wearing his blue flight suit, not the spacesuit, but the blue like one-piece jumpsuit that they wear. And the first thing he did, he's had a pool, and he walked up to the edge of the pool and just jumped in, because he hasn't showered or bathed or been in water or gravity in a year, right? He's been in this super sterile climate, well, not really super sterile, but climate controlled environment. And sometimes it's nice just to feel like a pillow or a blanket or a nice cool breeze or just water.
Yeah, every time I take a shower, I think about, what it must be like to not have a shower for a year.
Yeah.
So
they probably also, I would hazard a guess, they probably go get their favorite foods too, right? There's not a lot of like
no
steak
doubt.
in space,
No
stuff
doubt.
like that. So
I have another question here.
When are we gonna send people to Mars?
oh gosh, I wish I knew. So Mars has always been 30 years in the future, so as long as I've been alive. And any number I tell you will be wrong, but it will be after we go back to the moon, and it will be after we really learn how to live away from Earth. Because if you're on the space station and there's an emergency, you can get back. Like if there's like a real like emergency, you can get back to Earth within a couple hours. You get on your spacecraft, close the hatch, and leave. When you go to the moon, if there's an emergency like that, you can get back in like 3 to 5 days. But if you go to Mars and there's an emergency like that, you have to wait like 6 months for the planets to line up. And then you've got like a several month trip back on top of that. So what we need to do is we need to go to the moon, and we need to learn how to be independent of Earth. We need to learn how to take care of medical emergencies. We need to learn how to like grow our own food, because food has to last if you're taking it to Mars. You're gonna have to find food that'll last like 3 years. And that's not easy to do. And we're gonna have to develop technology, make sure we protect ourselves from radiation. So I don't have an answer. I'm sorry. I wish I did. But it will be after we are really established on the moon, so that we know what we're really getting into when we actually start sending people out to Mars.
All right. Any additional? We have a couple more questions back here.
Yeah, is there a garden on the ISS, or has anybody tried to grow plants on the ISS?
They do grow plants on the ISS. It's not like a huge like science fiction looking tube of leaves, which would be super cool, but they do actually have little tiny experiments where they grow like lettuce and other types of plants. I think they sometimes let the crew eat it, but actually usually it's for some science researcher on the ground who wants to see how the plants grow and if their nutrition is affected, right? Because if you're like, there's a lot of weird stuff in space, and so if you're growing a plant intended to feed the crew, but something about microgravity makes it like unhealthy or not nutritious, you're just wasting time. So they do actually, yeah, they have special little pods, little experiments, and they will occasionally grow plants and eat some of it and send the rest back.
All right, got another question?
Are we gonna ever go to Neptune?
I would love to say yes. You're talking a couple, probably 100 years. We have a lot of advancement to make before we can get out past Mars, but that's the goal, right? I mean, it's once we get to Mars, what's next? Once we develop some sort of, let's say, electric propulsion or reactors in space that have essentially unlimited energy, and you can hook it up to an electric thruster and just light the rocket for months at a time. I'd say the sky's the limit, but really there is no limit. So I would hope so. I hope we end up in a future where people are living on the moon and Mars and Earth and the moons of Jupiter and Saturn and Neptune.
So for those of you who came up Underwood Road, I don't know if you noticed, probably not at night, but there are planet signs along the way. Actually, when you drive out of the parking lot, you take a right, you'll see a sign for the sun. 130 feet away is a sign for Mercury. Another 100 feet away is a sign for Venus. 1.8 miles away is Neptune. All those signs are to scale. So if you think about it, so maybe it takes 8 or 9 months under current technology to get from Earth to Mars. On the road here, it may only be 200 feet, but over 1,000. Well, yeah, over 1,000 feet away is going to be, 10,000 feet away is Neptune. So you're right. We've got to amp up our engines, I guess.
Which is possible. When they did the New Horizons flew to Pluto, I watched that launch, and it was like a 15-year trip. So like I sat in my dorm room, watched this rocket go up in Florida, going to Pluto. And then 15 years later is when it got to Pluto. So if we're going to be doing big science fiction exploration of the solar system, we're going to need to find some sort of unlimited fuel supply, and a nuclear reactor would do nicely, and then hook it up to some sort of like Vasimir or electric propulsion that you can just turn on and leave on for months and just get faster and faster and faster and faster and faster.
Right. Any additional questions? Okay, one here, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay, I see that you say promotes international cooperation and peace. With
Yes.
the climate that we are in our world today, do you see any of that declining within your system?
Yes. So that worked really well up until about, I guess it was 4 years ago, right? Russia and the US were at each other's throats during the Cold War. And then we came together and built this incredible International Space Station. Everything humanity does is competitive, except for space. Right? Even the Olympics are competitive. But in space, you can't look down and see any borders. In space, it doesn't matter where you're from because you're all from Earth and it's the same place. So that actually worked really well for a long time until it didn't. However, we are still doing lots of international cooperation, even with Russia, on the International Space Station, and we just do not talk politics. But they're in the mission control room with us, and we have guys over in Russia, and we talk to them, and they're astronauts, and everybody's very professional. I can press a button and call them up. So that's kind of odd, but it is what it is. But we also have a lot of other countries that we work with, all the European countries, Japan. We just signed, I think, an agreement with Australia and a bunch of other countries for the moon lunar exploration. And so on a daily basis, I deal with a lot of really cool people from all over the planet. And it's really neat to see the different cultures and ideas and languages and appearances, and to remind ourselves that we're all really the same. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. And I'm hoping that once tension with Russia dies down, we can get back to working with them. And because we did great things with the space station, there's no reason we can't do great things with other countries moving forward.
All right, we have another question here.
What is the planet with the most gravity in our solar system? And could humans live on it since all the pressure?
So the planet with the most gravity is Jupiter, but it's a gas giant, so you couldn't live on it because it's just clouds, and it's also super, super radioactive. In terms of a planet you could walk on, Earth actually has the most gravity. Of Venus, Mars, Earth, Mercury, Earth is actually the biggest and has the most gravity.
So you're good, right?
You're good. You're right where you are. Yeah.
Don't change a thing. Well, actually, no. I don't know. Maybe we need to get you to be on our Astronaut Hall of Fame out back there. All right?
Oh my God, I'd love to, but I've applied. They keep saying no, so I don't know.
So there's a story I tell. We have a program called Girl Power Science where we try to get girls between 3rd and 8th grade to get interested in STEM careers. And so we always have a subject matter expert come in and talk about the work that she does. And a number of years ago, we had an astrophysicist from NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center talk about how she uses satellite data to look at carbon dioxide levels and how does that affect the climate and global warming. And then because it's a video conference, our girls get to ask her questions. And one of the girls asked, now again, remember these are 3rd to 8th graders. They asked, how did you get interested in astrophysics? Which sort of, when you think about it, it's a pretty good question. And she said, well, when I was in college, I was an English major. But my boyfriend, he was a physics major. We'd go from observatory to observatory. I eventually dumped the boyfriend, but I kept the astronomy.
That's a good choice, right? Astronomy, I have to say, Drew, the astronomy that you guys do and the observatory that you have open to the public is absolutely wonderful, because that's what got me interested in space, was just looking up at the night sky and being like, oh, wow, there's a lot up there. And then you get a telescope, and then there's even more up there. And then you realize that the things you're looking at are not just pictures on the wall. They're actual real places. There's mountains on the moon. There's craters and valleys on Mars. You could go there and stand there. And then you look at all the stars, and they're not just pinpricks. A lot of them are bigger than our own sun, and they're different colors. They're blue, they're white, they're yellow, and then they blow up and make these beautiful, huge clouds of gas. So like, it really, if you just look up, it's easy to fall down that path and want to keep going with it.
So, we have another question here.
All right. So, what are your current plans with the James Webb Telescope?
So the James Webb Telescope is awesome. I'm not working it because it's actually not really worked out of Johnson Space Center because we do manned spaceflight. But it did come. We have a big vacuum chamber, and they brought it in to test it in the vacuum chamber, and I got to see it, and it was really cool. The plans with the James Webb Space Telescope are, to my knowledge, it is an infrared telescope. So like the Hubble Space Telescope sees colors like you and I do with our eyes. The James Webb is infrared, and that's because it can cut through the gas and dust of galaxies and nebulas in space and see through them to see like the stars and planets that are on the other side. So the idea with the James Webb Space Telescope is it lets you see farther back in time than we've ever been able to do, to basically start to figure out how the universe formed. Like we've got the Big Bang and then we got us, but there's a lot of in-between stuff that we're curious about. So it helps just look really far back in time, because the farther you look, the farther in time you're looking, because light takes time to travel. So if something is really far away, the light you see is really old, which means you're basically looking at the past. So they want to study like the formation of galaxies in the early universe. They want to see, I think they can use it to look at atmospheres around planets, around other stars, to try to figure out if those planets might have life on them. And then there's a bunch of like, we don't know, right? You never know. You point it at a part of the sky and you never know what you're going to see. And so like a lot of the Hubble discoveries were accidental. And so I really don't know what it's going to do for us, but it's super cool.
One of the STEM activities we had here tonight is we had these gas discharge tubes, and by looking through what's called the diffraction gratings, you can see what kind of element is in that you're observing. So you could see, is there oxygen is there hydrogen, by looking at the bands in the diffraction grating, and we may actually still be able to do that afterwards. So if you didn't do the why is the sky glow, check that out as well. All right, well, Pete, I have to thank you so much for just an outstanding presentation. Thank you also for sharing.
Yeah, and if you guys ever get the chance, I'd say come visit NASA in Houston, but Houston's not known for being a touristy city. Although I really like the food in Houston and the people. But next time you're in Florida, in Orlando, at Disney World or wherever, the Kennedy Space Center is only like a 45-minute drive onto the coast. So if anybody of you guys in the audience have any Florida trips coming up, be sure to plan at least one day to spend at the Kennedy Space Center. It's expensive, but it's very cool. And if you time it right, you can get to see a rocket launch. So I would say to check it out. They have an incredible set of museums and tours and history and IMAX theaters, and it makes for a really nice day.
All right. Well, thanks again. I'd save you a cupcake, but next time you come up, we'll get you a fresh one. And
that sounds good.
All right. So actually, at this point, what we're going to do is we actually had it was up here somewhere. We have the picture. Oh, you have it. Okay. So, Laura, maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And we're going to put the picture in the time capsule. We're going to put the time capsule back in the wall.
Yeah, so I was over here in the corner, and I was displaying what the contents of the time capsule will be. So we opened the time capsule 2 years ago. Was it 70? The 73 was when it was set in the wall here. It was 2 years ago. 24. Time flies. So we opened the contents and we looked at that was on the table, and then in the last year we've been accumulating some things to put back into the time capsule. So right here we have the contents from 1973 when this building over here was opened. In 1993, what we're in right now was added to the existing building. And now we have some contents in there from this year, and it will be opened in, do the math. 40,
2073. How about that?
all right.
So you'll be the ones opening it. So
Right. So as we were working through this, I was talking to people at the back table about what should go in the capsule. And I just had this revelation that all of the young people here, we need a picture of them. Because 50 years from now, I'm hoping some of them will be back here in our even bigger and better building. And they'll be here for the opening of the time capsule again, as many of us were here for the opening of this one. So we have a photograph here. Jenny did a great job. We'll put it on our website as well. And I asked Patrick to do the best job he could to get people to sign their names. So we have names. I also dropped into here the announcement for tonight's program. So this is going in the time capsule, people. So I expect to, well, hopefully you'll be here 50 years from now, and you'll be here for the opening of the next time capsule. Yeah. Just want to set it on top even. Just set it on top.
Yeah.
I have the date in it already.
Okay.
So yeah, we have the 2026, and in the bottom is the 1973. That's been repackaged. So 2026, 73, and right on top, you'll set that in. We'll set the picture, and the picture has the date, has the announcement for the Winter Star Party tonight. Let me work on it.
Okay. Yeah, I am smushing it. Sorry. I tried.
Film.
Yep. Anybody remember film?
The analog days, I kind of miss them a little bit.
Right. So anyway, a little story behind this. I was told that there was a time capsule behind here, and so during our Astrofest, we had a room full of people, and we had chipped away the stone and brought it out, and sure enough, there was the time capsule, and it had a lock on it. There was no key. But fortunately, a screwdriver was all it took to open it up. The lock has been disabled, so they won't need a key in 2073. So what I'm going to do is we're going to have two of our interns help me because this stone is quite heavy. So Ridge and Patrick, if you want to come on up. All right, I'm going to move the webcam here so we can sort of see where it's going. All right, Laura, if you want to. All right. And then there should be the shims. There we go. All right. So what first thing we need to do is to lift it up. Just right, so we're still going to be open. I think we can still run some planetarium shows if you haven't done that already. We'll do there's a talk if you haven't seen our meteorite and space shuttle tile demonstration. We'll do that over right here in this room. Patrick, if you raise your hand over there, we'll take you into the dome and he'll give you a tour and show you how we do astrophotography. Yeah, in the 20-inch. Thank you much again for coming. We look forward to seeing you starting March 6th on a Friday night, and hopefully we'll have some clear skies so you can actually look through those scopes. Thanks again.